Today we are talking about rectangles, and we want to recognize and apply properties of rectangles, and we want to determine whether parallelograms are rectangles. So we have two images here. We have a parallelogram and we have a rectangle, and we want to decide if it is a rectangle, a property of a rectangle, or a property of a parallelogram. So what's the same and what is different? So in a parallelogram, we have opposite sides are congruent. So I'm going to put 3 congruent marks here, 3 congruent marks here, 2 congruent marks here, and 2 congruent marks here. Well, that's the same thing in a rectangle. So I'm going to put 3 congruent marks here, 3 congruent marks here, 2 here, and 2 here, and there. So in this case, what's the same? Opposite sides are congruent. Opposite sides are congruent. Okay. Next up we have, for parallelogram, we know opposite sides are parallel. So I'm going to draw 2 arrows here and 2 arrows there that show that those two sides are parallel. And then I'm going to put 3 here, and I'm going to put 3 here. And that shows that those two sides are parallel. Well, that's the same thing in a rectangle. 2 parallel lines here, 2 parallel lines here. So 2 marks here and 2 marks here says that those lines are parallel. 3 marks here and 3 marks here says that those lines are parallel. So opposite sides are parallel. Then we know for a parallelogram, we know that diagonals bisect. So we can put 2 congruent marks here and 3 congruent marks here. That shows that this line is bisected because it's cut in half, and this diagonal is also bisected. So it's called the diagonals bisect. That is true also for the rectangle, but the rectangle is a little bit different because the diagonals are congruent in this case. So not only do the diagonals bisect, but also diagonals are congruent. So I know that this side, or this diagonal, is congruent to this diagonal. So diagonals are congruent. So right here, this is true for both, and this is only true for rectangles. We have one more that's only true for rectangles, and that is all 4 angles are 90-degree angles. So to summarize some things that are a little bit different between a rectangle and a parallelogram, all 4 angles are congruent. All 4 angles are right angles. Which is 90 degrees. So we can mark that. And diagonals are congruent. So the diagonals of a rectangle are congruent.